Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I see folks are trickling in.
That's my peace sign. Oh, believe me, I've been battling Wi-Fi for the past half hour.
And yet you're here.
All day until this about an hour ago. Right, the Wi-Fi just went.
It's usually how it goes, hey? Just at the start of the event. But I can hear you loud and clear, which is awesome. And so I'm still admitting some folks in, and I'll let folks trickle in as they come. But I'll just start us off and welcome you all to this event with Solomon Ratt for The Way I Remember, this virtual book launch. It's not often that we get to do a virtual book launch, but it's a joy when we do, because it connects us to all these different places that we might have otherwise not gotten to host. And so in this case, we're so excited to have Solomon with us and for Arden to be hosting this event as well. My name is Romila. I'm with Massy Arts Society and alongside University of Regina Press. We are hosting this virtual book launch, and there's not much to say other than the fact that Massy Arts Society, as an Indigenous-owned art society supported by, which incepted as a bookstore just a couple of blocks down the street. It has been our priority to support over-excluded artists, including Indigenous and marginalized voices and queer and trans folks, and every intersection possible when possible. And that is the case tonight as well, as we get to hear Solomon's stories. So we're just very excited to be here, and we're excited to have such a wonderful turnout as well, a virtual turnout on a Wednesday night. And I'm sure folks are joining us from both Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories here in Vancouver, where we're located, but also from Treaty 4 and Treaty 6, and I think Arden's in Treaty 1. And so just really grateful to have such a great turnout with folks in so many different areas. So without further ado, I'll just pass it off to Arden to get us started, and very much looking forward to hearing you read, Solomon. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Romila, and thanks, Sol. I guess we agreed that I would try to be the starting point here. So I'm a little bit more organized than the last time we tried this. I would like to begin by trying to introduce myself in the way that you've taught me. Arden Ogg ntsigason Winnipeg nitohtsin moni âcimisowin. I'm Arden Ogg. My home is in Treaty 1 territory here in Winnipeg, and I'm a non-Indigenous woman. I want to begin by thanking Massy Arts Society for the opportunity to share our passion for Cree from a broader platform than we usually get to experience. I thank all of you for joining us. I also want to thank the University of Regina Press for their commitment to this very complicated project. Kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân is not a monolingual English book, after all. It's a bilingual presentation with 2 languages and with 2 scripts for Cree. So that's quite a lot of balls to juggle in creating a book that presents itself to a variety of readers. Not many publishers are brave enough to take this kind of thing on, or skilled enough for that matter. But we hope that maybe this production can help other publishers to see what's possible, because so many books like this, so many more books like this are needed, not just for Cree, but for Indigenous languages across Canada. Solomon Ratt, of course, is next on my list of people who deserve special attention, and although maybe he should have been at the front of the line. In spite of the fact that the book and its stories are his, much of the writing is very personal, and sometimes it was kind of painful for him to work with, and that created a challenge for us as we worked through and proved the stories again and again and again, forcing him to revisit that personal trauma. And I know that there were times when he questioned the emotional cost of his commitment to this project. For one, I'm grateful that he was able to persist and to share this original writing with all of us. So kinanasko mitnaw, Saul, I'm grateful to you. For those of us who are English speakers, it may not seem like a big deal at all that Saul is writing this book in his own first language. Why wouldn't he? For most of us, the ability to read and write in English is something that most of us can take for granted. We learn to read and write at school around the age of 6 or 7. And by the time we're 9 or 10, we've developed the foundation of reading proficiency that will carry us through our lifetime. And all of us wouldn't be gathered here if we didn't feel that reading was important to each of us. Now stop and consider for a moment the Cree language and the focused efforts that were made through the residential school system to eradicate it, along with all the other Indigenous languages in Canada. Consider how students were punished for even speaking in the only language they knew. Learning to speak a language, especially as a child, is something that comes pretty naturally in an environment that is language rich. But reading and writing are not natural skills. People don't just pick them up on their own. Everywhere in the world where there's reading and writing, that reading and writing has to be taught. It's an invented process. It's not natural. And very few people master reading and writing processes without some kind of guidance. So consider the speaker of Cree or other Indigenous languages in the residential school system. If spoken languages themselves were under assault, where and when could residential school students have found the opportunity to learn to read and write in Cree or any other language? For Saul and for many others whom I can name, that opportunity was not presented at all until they got to university. Saul received instruction from Jean Okamasis, who is one of the honorary founders of the Cree Literacy Network. Jean not only taught Saul to read and write Cree, but she eventually recruited him for the classroom and urged him to help share those skills which he had mastered with others. And he continued to do that for 37 years, retiring in December last year from First Nations University of Canada. This afternoon, I pulled out a copy of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People because I wanted to share with you Article 13, or part of Article 13 that deals with language. It says, Indigenous people have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their histories, languages, oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. A large part of what's going on in this book is Solomon Ratt demonstrating how he has personally embraced those rights that were denied to him as a child. This book is, in fact, tangible, permanent evidence of his passion for sharing those rights with others to whom they also belong. And so here we are acknowledging this book is something remarkable because it demonstrates reclamation of a right that was systemically denied by the Government of Canada and the residential school system. So I want to take a moment also to consider how many other residential school survivors might have stories of their own to tell, or might have had languages of their own to restore if Canada's linguicidal policies had not been so successful. So at that point, I'll wrap up by thanking Saul once again for sharing his stories, for sharing his language, for patient teaching he offers to anyone who asks. And I asked as recently as this afternoon, and for helping to promote the importance of reading and writing as essential elements of Cree language revitalization, so that Cree people of this generation and of generations to come can fully exercise their language rights with pride and take back the place in Canadian culture that was so long denied them. So thanks all and congratulations. I hope our collective work makes you proud and that it encourages others to reclaim for themselves the language and culture of their ancestors.
I saw something pop up there. Then again, guys, got seeing got big screen up show. Thank you for talking on my behalf. Got big âcathôhkîwina on my behalf. Talking on my behalf. We're going to do a few things that are unusual at a book launch. Like I've asked 2 of my former students to read a story from the book, this book, just to show you that it can be done. 3, well, Arden's also going to read something. But as Arden had said, Cree is my first language and I did not speak English until I went to the residential school. And the premise of the book, the theme of the book is how my education, traditional education, got interrupted by my schooling. See, my traditional education came from my parents. It taught me everything. When they told me traditional stories, they showed me how to live in this world. Everything's always in flux whenever we meet something. I always have to adjust to that. And in the stories, I see that how I could meet this challenge and how I could proceed further. We saki check there you go. We Saki-chak is this traditional character, a legendary character in Cree legends, and he is often very, very foolish. But in his foolishness, he teaches us how to be. One thing I like about Saki-chak is whenever he says something, he always carries it out. I will end this whole session later on with a traditional Saki-chak story, since some of you want to hear those stories. I know some of you want to do it. Okay, so I'm going to read from those of you who have a book, turn to page 150 on that, and you can read along with me. Just. Âcimisowin, kiwit nok, bigot a scale kiwit I am a chick, kinegahigok, kit sanak, minagwaku maganak. Kanata skik, if the match ik. Matawisi, keep up a motihuik. Ma make his he got gawi, not the make. Ask a man into it, you gig, Mr. Saga Higanek. He gave me the mats now. He get cheeky then he would say, oh, in, take a make a such a kinegahigok, Mina, Kuaku Maganak. He get cheeky then he made the win, we got a skik, canata skik. No, the gay or check Agatha Kiki, near the one pogo. Kiki ma mituni the tin hat. Kiki ma below, tin at the low kill when I speak happy book. Think on this. Listen. Think on this. You are a child in the North Country. You are living with your parents, your siblings, your relatives, living off the sacred land. You travel along the Churchill River, downriver, then back upriver, and sometimes travel down to Lac La Ronge to visit. You have a good life. You are happy to help your parents and relatives with their work. You are happy to play in the wilderness on the sacred land. You don't speak English, only Cree. You like listening to the sacred stories told in the winter. The first 6 years of my life were spent out in the wilderness with my parents. We didn't have a home base. In the wintertime, we lived in a little trapper's cabin wherever we ended up in. usually, along the lake somewhere, along the river. In the summertime, we lived in tents, fishing off the rivers and fishing off the fishing in Lake Larange. My father was a trapper and a fisherman, and that's how we lived. We didn't have a home base until 1961, when I finally came back home from residential school, and we settled in Stanley Mission. And that's where I'm from now. I was born just 10 miles upriver from Stanley Mission. And that was our home base. And that's how we lived. I didn't know any home base. That's just really neat. But the whole idea of being taken away from my parents was a traumatic experience, which I denied for years. I'm tough. I didn't get abused physically or sexually at the residential school. I'm tough. I didn't experience any trauma, which in itself is a trauma response, by the way. And it took me a while to really, like my daughter used to. I think you have to deal with a lot of trauma issues from there. And I used to deny it all the time until I finally said, okay. And then I started writing these stories for Cree Literacy Network. Well, for myself actually, but then Arden would pick them up like that. And that was about 10 years ago I started writing these stories. And this was my process of healing, of recognizing what did go on. Being torn away from my parents was traumatic enough, something I had to deal with. It's really neat. And there was all part of the process of the Canadian government to do away with my Creeness, my Indianness, my whole being, basically. And before I go into an aspect of the book, I've learned a lot in this life. And one of the teachers I learned from was a professor in the University of Arizona, who is always gone now on another journey. But we were talking about language preservation, and language modes of death. And in his lecture, he went, the late Dr. Richard Ruiz lecture at the University of Arizona in 2002, he talked about 3 modes of language preservation and language death, which I immediately saw how this corresponds so well with my own experience in the residential school and the Canadian school system. And Ruiz says that the first mode of language preservation, language death, is intended where organizations try to kill the First Nations languages deliberately. We think of government policy, think of the church. Government and church worked hand in hand to accomplish this through residential schools. So many people did not survive those schools. I'm grateful I did. And then there's the subintended, which is a twist of the above, perhaps an ironic twist. It's a mode wherein publications help to preserve and revive the Cree language. The church, using Roman orthography and syllabics writing systems to write and publish Bibles, prayer books, and hymnals in Cree. There's massive. I'm not sure what the word is I'm looking for. Massive. There's lots of material available for this kind of stuff. And they still struggle with English to this day after so many years of this, right? And so we have this. We have these publications by the church, which help preserve the language, basically, because they're written in Cree. You could find the word for lion in the Bible. Ha! You didn't know that, did you? I won't tell you what it is. Go look for it yourself. It's in the âcathôhkîwina, by the way, in online dictionary. But that's where they got the word for lion from, because of Daniel meeting the lion in the lion's den. So they made. So people then made up words for things we didn't have, and we get criticized for making up words that we don't have, But they've been doing it for years, which is okay. And then there's a second thing: the ethnographic collections of linguists and folklorists, writing oral stories, compiling dictionaries. Fairies and Watkins, a dictionary of the Cree language in 1938, first published in 1865 by Fairies, which is a wonderful, wonderful book, wonderful place where you could find old words that are no longer used in Cree, in everyday Cree word. Just really wonderful source. And then there's Leonard Bloomfield's Plains Cree texts and Sacred Stories of the Sweetgrass Cree. And these are wonderful because they have the stories written in Cree and stories written in English translations. And I laugh at that little footnote that Leonard Bloomfield had put in one of his stories that the people in Sweetgrass Reserve called him Mississippiso, and he was really proud of that. That is an evil water serpent in Cree. So that the people in Sweetgrass were playing a trick on him, but he was proud of his name, Big Water Lynx, you know. So there's an instance of Cree people playing tricks on the Moniawak, which we always do. Which you love to do, by the way. Okay, all right, I'll behave. Okay, so that's those are Plains Cree texts and Sacred Stories of the Sweetgrass Cree. And then we have in Eric Wolvengrave's Nehewe and Âcathôhkîwina Cree words in an English volume and a Cree volume. 2 volumes of this stuff, of massive words that 30 Cree educators helped with the editing one summer, and it almost didn't come about because I threw a tantrum like I usually do. I was responsible for going through the syllabics in these dictionaries, and I can't even remember what I was throwing a tantrum about, but I refused to work at it for 2 weeks until Eric brought me some coffee. He made up for. Had he known to bring hot chocolate, I would have been better sooner. Anyway, so that is a wonderful dictionary that is online in âcimisowin. Okay, and then we have the Saskatchewan Indian Cultural Centre's publications of Wissahichak, the stories of Wissahichak. All those were published in the early 1970s. They were all in English, unfortunately. So we had to do this. We had to I've got some students and to retranslate some of these stories, which is really good, and they did a great job of that. My students are amazing, actually. And then we have another subintended thing of speakers of indigenous languages writing in their languages in Cree. And in Cree, we have the following: Edward Aheneke, who compiled a collection of traditional stories published as Cree Trickster Tales, 1929 edition in the American Folklore Journal of American Folklore, 1929 edition. They're all in English, unfortunately. But you know one wonderful thing about those collections is they retain every aspect of the stories I heard from my mother, except for one thing. Every once in a while, they clean up. You know, there's the stories of the startlers that I really, really love, where Wissahichak goes ahead and convinces the startlers to reveal their names, and as soon as the startlers reveal their names, he shits on their heads. That is the way it is in the actual Cree story. And it is like that in the Bloomfield collection also, I think. I know. And but Aheneke says, as soon as the startlers reveal their names, he picked them up and rubbed mud on their faces. That's how he, what is the word, Arden? Bladderdize? You make it Mikey, so. But these are so wonderful collections.
Bowdlerize is the word you want, sorry.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
So we have all these collections of stories that people should know about. They could have that. And you also must stop this new invention, new tradition that I call young mothers saying, oh, I can't tell stories. I'm not to my children. I am not a storyteller. Please get out of that mode, because every parent back then was responsible for telling the stories to their children. They didn't wait for days and days and days for the storyteller to come into their camp. They would have had to wait all winter, maybe 3 winters before the storyteller came in. You can't afford that. Learn these stories. The material is available. Learn them and tell them to your children. Clean them up a little bit if you feel like you have to. Lately, I've been doing that because one time I got invited to an elementary school to tell stories. about a big farting skunk who once goes around farting on people and animals to death. But kids loved the story. I didn't edit it at all. I just went ahead and told the story as I heard it from my mother. And as it turns out, the kids were really excited. They went home and they told their parents about, oh, the storyteller came and told us about this big skunk who farted on people and other animals and killed them. Well, the school board heard of this. The school board called me and told me about the problem. And I haven't gone back to that school since. I haven't been invited back since. But it's all right. You know, a little later on, well, lately I've been cleaning things up a little bit, but not all the time. I didn't clean anything up in the stories that are here. All the naughty bits are there. So we have these stories that are wonderful, that are accessible to you. And then there's Dr. Anne Anderson, who compiled the first Cree dictionary, not the first, but a Cree dictionary for Alberta Cree in the 1970s. And then Frida Henniku, who wrote a grammar on the Cree languages, as well as numerous Cree books, including some traditional stories for children's enjoyment. And these are available there. You know, I'm still appalled that people are saying there's no material to work with. They actually do. They actually still do that. They do. There is a lot of material that Dr. Frida Henniku had created for us. And then there's Dr. Jean Hugimasis, another of my teachers, who wrote Cree Language of the Plains. I'm glad she did that because we were using a Mary Edwards Speak Cree text where they had examples of Cree, like she was mad at him, so she hit him over the head with a frying pan. We can't have that, can we? So Jean went ahead and threw away that textbook, wrote her own textbook, which we used in Cree 100 and 101 classes for a few years, and it's still used today. And that text is available online somewhere for free of charge, I believe. Cree Language of the Plains is a wonderful book. And then we have the unintended mode of language death. This is where parents who went to residential school refused to speak their languages to their children for fear that their children would get treated the same way as they did when they were in residential school. I'm guilty of that. So we did ourselves in on that. And even some schools refused to teach traditional stories in their classrooms. Jack has a terrible reputation for being really naughty. If you turn to page 208 in your textbook, in Suana Chistaya, kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân now. Danekoma kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân now, kâ-tiwanitayak. With a kid and I do Tasuyak. Tatawiga Ganilawi Mitiak. Tatawiga Nihiluyak, speaker Mama Wintuyak. Tatawiga Ganiluyak, speaker Mama Piak. Tatawiga Nihiluyak, speaker Kiskanhamakiak. Tatawiga Nihiluyak, speaker Atsalukiak. Tatawiga Ganiluyak, speaker Kagisumuyak. Tahtawiga Kimonia wika tago send mana is another chamayak. Ego secretary Nisuana Chitano, Kipik Squin no. Metanatav Scott yet Nisuanachi Sumagak, Kipik Squin no. Linguicide. Why is it that we are losing our language? Because we are doing it to ourselves. Every time that we don't speak Cree to each other, every time that we don't speak Cree when we are at gatherings, every time we don't speak Cree when we are at meetings, every time that we don't speak Cree when we are teaching, every time that we don't speak Cree when we are telling sacred stories, Every time that we don't speak Cree when we are praying. Every time that we bully a young person when she tries to speak Cree. You sound so white, we tease them. These are the ways we kill our language. It's like our language is beginning to commit suicide. You could hear a nail drop. Dan away sag hewe when just mama to near the Oma, a dip is sky give it knock. Keep on in our John Abscus. Kissa Skahina was your chinigans. Kitanaskana, wow, you got get the gun on now, will be what go watch. Not just chato, Kika away. Who home at doing it, do was a wit to make. Good the one happens, but do could do. Was a school chickens, to go steep, though. Kigoi, Papia, tak. Kigawi, Papia, tak, at Chato kill. Kita in the pad. Ah, boom. He dip a sky guy may have a giskin about doing Gamigok. Kini Pitika Pawina worked out Massy biscuit, just dog biscuit. Kita Tamihana, wow. Kigo Simona, wow. And stop he got you. Kinwis, Kikanoa, Patin, Chiga Station, no. That house, he pays, got Maguchek with a wheat to make. Be the skinny pan. Where is the love? Listen, think on these. This. It is night at your home. You put wood into the stove. You light the candle. You lay out the blanket and cover yourselves with a down quilt. Your mother starts telling stories. Outside an owl hoots. The fire in the stove crackles. Candle casts shadows. Softly your mother tells stories. You begin to sleep. Or this. It is night at the residential school. You line up to choose a biscuit, a dog biscuit. For yourself, you say your prayers. You lay down to sleep. Lights are turned off. For a long time, you watch the shadows every time a car drives by outside. Eventually, you sleep. Later on, I'll tell a story. I'll read another story later on. You see, when the residential school, laying awake at night, in residential school, we saw a lot of movies. And a lot of times, I really like these prisoner of war movies where the prisoners are in their dorms. And every now and then there'll be a searchlight from Nazis flying across the ceiling or on the walls. And that's what this poem reminded me of. That when the cars go by, the lights going across, it was like being in prisoner of war. And in effect, I wasn't prisoner of war. That's how I look at them. And part of the thing about this book also is some fond memories of being with my parents, of doing things with my parents. If I spent 10 months of the year, it seems like 10 years, 10 months of the year at residential school and 2 months of the summer, in the summer, you know. And so in the summertime, I'll spend with my parents back on Stanley Mission. âcimisowin sa. Kaya was Syrian, Mr. Himana nigi to ski higawin. O ho âcimisowin sa nigi totin. Gay na chini, dan, nigi nagohtan. Nigi tapagon, nigi wich, how no tawipan to pagita ho, the god kana tatapit. Nigi pigot tahopan, the go pigian. Nigi nagwatson. Kahkida ho âcimisowin sa nigi wich higon. Nigi sumam kagi wapatabanoma. Kageo Batavan, Igutam, E. the Gusian, Iwichihuyan. When I was a child, I was given lots of chores. These are the chores I did. I fetched firewood. I made firewood. I set snares. I helped my late father setting nets and fetching the nets. I chiseled a hole in the ice to haul water. I fetched meat from a kill site. All these chores helped me. In that way, I came to see that I belonged, that I was helping. And one more memory before I ask a former student to read to us, and we'll do that. Page 148 in the Catholic book. Bohpahoi pesum. Gata ski and our sky spellic. Nigipi nata Nigipi nata hoga and almana into tanto I michigia was our nig and askoche. They swing a march watching Togamon miskan of juice moinik. Or chita pugamana to be not the hoga we act Malagan. Ikeda o pahoyak. Piago nigi Kagwichima Nikawi pan Kiswin Iagoche or Pahoipism Kichigasut, our pisum. Came with the bah, Pomaga, Nigi the mag, or Pahoipism or pisum it, thou was the Swimana, Sisi Pissagiga, the skitsack, yet in the thou Pahuchik. Flying up moon. Every year about this time, August, they came for us to go to school far away from home. At that time, there was no road to Stanley Mission. They had to come get us by plane to fly us out. Once I asked my late mother if that is why this month was called Flying Up Moon. She had a good laugh, but told me that this month was called Flying Up Moon because it was a time when the ducklings and goslings were able to fly. That's August. I was always thinking of things like this. That's why my parents call me âcathôhkîwina, which means conscientious, wise one. I fooled them, didn't I? Anyway, let's ask a student, a former student of mine to to read to us. Let's start off with Veronique. I don't know what she picked. I told her to pick anything she wanted.
I picked a good one. Tansega kio, Veronique Nitsega son Monial Square Nia, Dojage Otsinia, was gonna get us again, we can make what's I'm Veronique. I'm one of Solomon's former students. I am a non-Indigenous person. I'm from Montreal, and I am now in Regina. So the story I pick, I will start with the Cree version. It's Nahiwin. Okitkinwa maganak, niga kakiskimawak, anige kanote nihitowitik. Notawipan nige kiskiwahamak, taisi tapagwayan. Nigimi te kapatigana ta otse tapagwigian tigaiganis ta kisketa wagwao mitsigosak tapagwaniapi iguamogoman ta manin saman mitsigosa ta Sitoskahaman tapagwan, nigi kiskino tahik ita tamiskeman, waposo miskena sa igwa, minata isi, nisitawinaman, iagone, nigi kiskinohama, ta isi otastayan, tapagwan niyapi, igwatanse ta isi agotayan, waposo miskenasik. Nistam ka at kotayan waposo tapagwan nigi mamatan maga mitseitwaw ka ati tapagwayan nigi atinahan maganots ni mamatan natis kayas aspin ka ki tapagwayan kapimana pogo tapagwayan ki spin ni note nahan. Ikosi anima, kakido, kiguai, kispinote, nahiyani, otsitao, pogo kâ-pî, me atosketaman. Proficiency. My advice to students, those who want to learn Cree. My late father taught me how to set snares. He gave me the tools with which to set snares, a small axe for cutting down saplings, snare wire, and a knife to cut sticks to brace the snare. He led me to the rabbit trails and showed me how to recognize them. He taught me how to shape and tie the snare wire across the rabbit trails. The first time I hung a rabbit snare, it was awful. But as I set more rabbit snares, I became proficient at it. But today, I'm not good at it anymore, as it's been a long time since I set a rabbit snare. I have to continually set rabbit snare if I want to be good at it. It is this way for all things. If I want to be proficient at anything, I have to continually work at it. Ekose.
Ekose, thank you very much. That was tough. Can you see that? That's how my late brother made his first rabbit snare. I asked him why. And he said, the rabbit has big ears, so we have to make allowances for that. He was a great joker. I loved it. It was really, really good. So, but of course, that's not how you make a rabbit snare, right? It's great indeed. Okay. So I hope you're enjoying this. 152, please. A little after a couple more readings of mine, I'm going to ask Darian to read a story that I really enjoy. I actually really enjoy the story when he reads it. When I read it, it's not so hot. It's not so funny when I read it, but when he reads it, I really, really enjoy it. This one's called School Bus. It's about the first time I took off. I was taken away to residential school. This is the way it was. Kiskinohamattuittapaanask. Kiimidogik sipaya uspiinastamgagi siputahigawian nigikoche. Uhpimigitantuamiktsigian. Nagutaasigigaspinigi tahtupipunan. Namodan nagipi which Nigipi wichi wignanak, Nigipi wichi wigunanak, Ninihigunanak, Mr. Tapanas Focus, with a Nigawipan, Axigamego Hiat, Ege could Katuhpinit, you go no Tawipan, Egi Poset, Ega Ege no tea, what Migoyak, the Sabitiak. Higane into Sinanak, Mr. Tapanas Gutnigasi wichi wigunanak. Neither ikon stage ago. Nistamik spegis with Jack, Eate, which you are go Nimisananak. Sasa with the wall, Ki sa Sibwitiwak. Kistabinanek Sase again to I may sigage a kegspe. Need an stumple. He got an eggy post nan, Mr. Panaskok, Mr. Saga Higaneko, his cook Stabinanek. All Saints Indian Student Residential School, Chigati, Iguta, Kistapinanik, Anima Residential School, Kagi, Dr. Higawian. Kinais Gigaspin again, Pimita Passonan, the Mozaki Oche, Midas and Miskano, Tapskuchanoch. The speaker get this but Tapasiak, Pushatabana Skok, Negate Machusen, Emaway Catagon, Nuaku Maganak. Piago skinny gives negated. Imagine a wick. Cabinage at the Utamihek, Higusby, Ya âcimisowin, Pogogi Goy. Be this negate the Bassonan, Kistapinanek. Be this the Bassonan, Kistapinanek. Wah, the Gibamscat in it, the Goki, Mam, Sagawasta Higana. Kida the way the Bassonan, this will not do a good knock. Negi Kapanan, Miss Tapana Swokoche. You're going to get nipa we higan going on. Epi hoya kita untuk mereka hoya kita mereka we kita mereka hoya. Nige pihten nebisakim di bati check. Niga igutan ni sta nige kwe itu tan. Mereka nige pihten niga wen. Nige pihten niga knichna bisak. Igutan residential school nige yan. Mita dat bisem dat taski. Nama we kas nige uche kiwan. Ta gamak sigi sigak. But the man who does sabi tahtu kagi tahtu bipunyan. Tawi tahtu niben manan kawi nigi kiwan. School bus. It was a beautiful morning when first I was taken away from my home to go to school far away. I was 6 years old at the time. Our parents did not accompany us to the bus because my mother was away in the hospital. She had tuberculosis. And my father had gone off in his canoe because he did not want to watch us getting taken away. So it was my aunts who took us to the bus. It was the first time for me and my older brother to be taken away. And we were going with my older sisters who had gone away before. They had already gone to Prince Albert to go to school. So we boarded the bus. We went from La Ronge to Prince Albert. All Saints Indians Residential School was the name of the residential school in Prince Albert, where I was taken. It was a long ride back then because the roads were not as good as they are now. When we drove away on the bus, I started to cry quietly, crying over my relatives. There was this one teenager who took pity on me. He spent time entertaining me, telling me stories about all sorts of things. We eventually arrived in Prince Albert, and I was amazed at all the big buildings. All of a sudden, we arrived at our school. We got off the bus and we were made to stand by as we waited to be called to our dorms. I heard my older sister's names being called and I tried to go with them, but the other boys held me back. I stayed in the residential school for 10 months of the year, never going home for Christmas until I was 16. At least I went back home every summer. All Saints Residential School. My late father used to try to say that. He didn't speak a word of English. So All Saints Residential School sounded to him like, watch it school. You know, it's like how you make up words, what you hear in another language, you try to repeat them as best you can. It's just like the word dinige. The word has in Cree that is now known as thank you, the colloquial term for thank you, dinige. The old Scottish traders would thank the their Indian aides every time the Indians would hand them something. The old Scottish traders would say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." They couldn't say the th, so they thank ye, right? So that Cree heard that as dinige, so they adopted that as dinige. And another word we adopted into Cree is âcathôhkîwina. Same fur traders and their Indian guys along the Churchill River, throwing packages of goods to each other. Catch it, catch it, catch it, catch it, catch it. The Cree heard this, of course. Oh, âcathôhkîwina. So now that word is in our Cree language. And you'll have somebody fighting you if you tell them that that's a borrowed word from English. No, it's a Cree word. Catch it, it's a Cree word. No, go ahead, think that way. It comes from catch it, because we do have a word in Cree for catch it. Now what dina? There's your old word for catch something. You're catching something in midair. Now what dina? Catch it now, you know, it's that kind of stuff. So it's really neat the way you hear things, and my late father and I had a good laugh about things like that, you know, like there was one time he went to the doctors in Lac La Ronge and a medical, and when he got back, they had to fly it back. So back then we had to take bush planes to come back and forth between La Ronge and Saint Mission. When he comes back, he's wondering, sitting around, and says, "Oh, don't sit to go, me Mr. Ratt, I don't know how these doctors knew that I had lots of children because they called me Mr. Rat, which means big rat. I don't know, man, you guys are little rats. Yeah, your ears play tricks on you, right? Okay, talking about ears playing tricks on us, let's hear, let me take a break and ask Darian to read to us.
Oh.
There it is.
Nigantin nigagya tam squawak. Nigantin nigagya tam squawak.
Ginigan.
Kita nama tiga nim minuedo maya. We don't scare which do. Then magapi the makota. Kita tam skatana kakio gapi to tegota. The more I must again. I don't have the page. I have the book in front of me. So, but the page that we have that we're going to be reading 172. So if you have your book, that Mr. Timoton, there in Sierra, shouldn't kawawa kikamagi yochian kawati.Nego I got on my piano to Skunganich. I go my gachi pituagi kakio and you check that. Which topic got as a Witian Skunganigoji. Dagi Bay Skunamagosiano, Dagi Okichote, Nagos Kanagasasti. I go Solomon that way we take Dagiskuna Masrian. How many years when I give a pitch and give it to Niggas and that of years ago. That way, Solomon that way. Metani Nigivichik. Danio Yan, Dan Stott the man, Neo, and that is Skana Mata. Kakio, I got Angi cannot take Skana Gosia. What I said, my name is Darian Âcathôhkîwina. I come from the Causes First Nation, Kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân. That's where I grew up. On the reserve until I was about 17, but I didn't grow up speaking the language. I had to leave the reserve to learn the language, as well as my other languages that I'm learning. So Anishinaabe and âcathôhkîwina. Âcathôhkîwina was my first love because I didn't know that I could do languages. All I spoke was English growing up. But Solomon was the one who really helped me to understand the language and to be able to speak the language. So 5 years ago, I didn't speak a lick of Cree. I just spoke English, like I said, as I was growing up on the reserve. And now I'm happy that I'm able to help others who want to learn and to be able to teach. So I'm also a lecturer at First Nations University, where I actually learned the language. So it's kind of a full circle going around. Now I'm teaching people the language in a same place in which I learned it. So it's always nice to talk about that and the help that Solomon gave me. Solomon in the way Mr. Timoton âcimisowin.
172 in the book. Page 172 in the book.
Mitatato mit now they were having so must again agmit. So 172 on the page in the book is where you'll find the story of Mr. Timoton. Opa mi kiskramato gamgo kiastio min sitaro utomana ki âcimisowin aguskinamagi agvisagi pichgasa. Samigo ya kwao swiga titire. Maga mana mi chitwa ngin to imotran. Go chito ge pega eta min sitaga gagi kititimit piag mistatim. Ega geta kimotea. Isagi pichgasa. Itire. Maga moenanto. Wow, tagosik, nigin to kimota nani agoni, visari pichgasa. Kya mana mistatin. Nigi si pata nan mingan, eva papiak mistik nigi squatta vata nan. No much non tota nigi uchuapa mana nan amistatin. Egani oma egosiak, Mr. Oki imamo miniak. Kitatu ega pitoa ni uchu aganak. Moyo, ego tapasitan. Imate ito ichik napito awake si pui patachik. Poit ko yak na pio git dimigo yak nitititin. Mr. Artist from Mr. Gogan Gausan. Much and go up a mick. And did one, dark me moment and. Guano mamma what the one which in cigar wheel chipitin is a pitgas casamana man. Gigo your sapper big. Kita to wake out to Mr. Tim. Nikos comic. Mettene ni chipagisinian, Mr. Gokochi, Goki Guskumit. Oh, what the say, Giga mo minian. Yeah. Hasta gato, solo, that way good mood to I sweet it. That way, not ask with now, and ask him no matter you meet again. Oh, my was snagging that way I used a kitchita, Gokoma, snagging that is gonna my go see. You win, that is gonna my go see. I meet again when I go Gagio, Masanae, when that way. Give go now. Wow. Dan is tot the mass, dan is tot the mech. I'm thankful to be able to come and read some stories. And this is how I learned the language initially, was through reading and writing. So that's why I said this book is really important, a really great resource if you, especially if you don't have Cree speakers in your, in where you live, or nobody in your family speaks it anymore. This is something that can help you to start to, boost up your literacy and to overall improve your speaking through reading. Because when I was first learning, that's how I learned the language. I don't have anybody to speak to in my family. Nobody speaks it. So I always say, I usually just talk Cree to myself, and it's worked so far. Okay, go say no tan. That way can ask
English.
Oh, the English now, I'm sorry.
English.
I just thought horse lips. At the residential school, there was an orchard from where the teachers would harvest crab apples, which they fed us when they were ripe. But many times we would go and steal those crab apples. Maybe that is why they kept the horse there one time, so that we would not go in to steal the crab apples. Maybe, but no matter. One evening, we went to steal some of those crab apples. Never mind the horse. We sneaked under the fence and each of us climbed a tree. We didn't see the horse anywhere. And there we were up in the trees when I heard my buddies. Here he comes. Come on, let's run. Maybe it's one of the supervisors, I think. In any case, I'm up in a tree. He won't see me, I say. I continue to pick crab apples to eat. And as I was reaching into the branches to pick another crab apple, I felt something wet. All of a sudden, a horse neighed. He surprised me. I was so surprised that I fell out of the tree. Apparently, I was trying to pick his nose to eat. That way you would say
Yes. It's a tummy hen.
No.
It's a tummy hen. We had fun. There are some times when we had fun at the residential school. There were some funny moments. A lot of times there was a lot of loneliness, but there were some funny moments. And to this day, I can't say that word. What was I picking?
âcathôhkîwina.
English. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you're talking about his nose.
English word. How do you say the English word?
Crab apples.
I refuse to read this story because I cannot say that word. But I sure love those little apples. I'll do it like that. Okay, I'm going to read something and then I'll get Arden to read something. I think we're going to be going at that. This is from 163, 162. âcimisowin âcathôhkîwina. Nagawiban makes a hatch go. They got the magoyak, was get back in his kissna. Get a giskama gawe, it took the residential school, Kistapinanik. No, you do a piece. Nigigistien at the skip back wigin is kissing the Gistabinani kisse. You got that Dawson yak. The Miskutawin Sanan. The Mascamigawind. Then to skip back again is kissing. Stolen moccasins. August. My late mother She's sewing new moccasins for us to wear when we go back to residential school in Prince Albert. September. I wear my new moccasins to Prince Albert. When we arrive there, we change clothes. My new moccasins are taken away from me. I've never seen them again. A little side footnote. As one of my cohorts said one time when I first put this up on Facebook, I wonder what happened to all our moccasins, huh? Because most of us went with new moccasins and we never saw those again. Even when we went home the following summer, we never saw those moccasins again. And they were beautiful moccasins.
Mhm.
So these are the things that I have had to come through, to come to terms with. You know, I want my new moccasins.
I've heard people say that the style of beadwork was different as well, that people made for their children than the things that they made for trade. So I don't know whether that was true. For example, in Moose Factory, there was one mom who was making Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle moccasins, beating Ninja Turtles onto the moccasins for their kids. People would do puppies or other designs out of love for their children, to send that love to school with them. You know, those are the ones your mom made, right?
These are the ones like my mother made. My
Right.
sisters, my
Okay.
2 sisters made them for me.
Beautiful.
To copy the way my mother did it. So my older sisters and my younger sister worked together on these ones for me. It was pretty neat. And I need to charge my phone. And so
Well, then if it's okay, I will try my best.
yeah, go ahead.
I will try my best to read this little piece.
All right.
In honor of reading. I should be much better at this after all the years that I have worked with Cree. But it wasn't my good fortune to live with audio all the time. I worked with Cree in print a lot more than with audio. So that's another thing that I'm very grateful for, Solomon, is the ability to have your recordings to help support learners with the audio, as well as the reading. So the piece I'm going to is on I think it's on page 218. Excuse me. Nitohta. Kawitha nakata idinawatisiwin. Kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân. Kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân. Tipidak atsidao nakata wanawitowin. Gakito. Nitohta. Kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân. Kitansko wakumakaninawa. âcathôhkîwina. Kamatwan. Listen. Don't leave First Nations traditions behind. They will always accompany you. They will always help you. Just for a bit, leave the noisy confusion behind. Be quiet. Listen. In the silence, you will hear our ancestors telling us sacred stories. It's quiet and peaceful. And thank you, Saul, for that piece, because I realized as I was reading it and writing up my notes earlier that it kind of closed the circle in a way, taking us back to the idea of the many Indigenous languages and revitalization, recovery of Indigenous culture all across Canada.
Yeah. So residential schools had a terrible effect on most of us, all of us probably.
On the ones
Yes.
left behind as well, the families left behind as well.
Mm-hmm. And I talked about my older sister and my younger sister a little while ago. This is on the effect of residential school also. This is about 10 years ago, I think it was. No, less than that. But 7 years ago, my older sister and myself and my younger sister decided to go to Arizona, and I went to California, for a 2-week trip. And we all speak English. We all speak Cree. So I was looking forward to 2 weeks of talking nothing but Cree on this road trip. It didn't happen. We spoke English most of the time. Darian and I speak more Cree to each other today than my sisters and I spoke Cree on that trip. But that is effect of the residential school also, you know, like we just refused to do that. And part of the thing was also in this story, 192. Page 192 is another story. More the Indian. Kayas mana gagi wasiliano di mana nigin tawya Michigan and Kistapinana. Ego mana in Tawikislam of Siak. Tahtaski mana Tagagi Pisum. Kagi magic Dayak in Tawik Kakislam of Siak. Egota. Or my residential schools Gagi Chikatiki. Egotaki Itotian. Prince Albert Indian student residences. Kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân, yago anima. Ego tamana, mistahi mana, awasa kikittima isuag, mistahi mana, ma wikatiwak, unigihiguawa. Ay, mina, mistahi mina mana, nigi mochiki tanan mana. Tahtoga matna kisigag. Ego swi mana, nigi kanawa patinan, chigana picture shows. Nigi it's the katinan mana. Yagone mana, mitani mana nigi ba mochigitanan he kapuni wapatamak. Without this mana into mitawiak. But the victim is tabs good mana nana pirates mana nigi mitawa nigi mitawanan. You got me cowboys and Indians. You can see mana gagi is a mitawiak. You go omega gay is a big yak oma mitani mana nigi. We need the missionan. More than is nan near the work. Tagi is a bimatsiak. It tigawiak mana. Egusimana kagi is a higawiak. They would take his mamma to Yamigoft. Maga Piagoma, eat the way. Gonna back the Mac cowboys and Indians. Chigana John Wayne Eguta. Nina gagi ayat. Nigi noguset. Nigi chickenen. Niaganema. Nigi kapatin. Midiritin. Taken the Wabattaman John Wayne. Taken a wapmak. Nigamana keep only Wabattama Hiagone. Aya mana nigi Toimitawan and cowboys and Indians. Magamana egi no Mawasan. I was going to go yak. I papia Indians, you got papia could take cowboys. You got man and neither Capi man and neither square and Nigoyan. You get that the real man who tapisk geese be a geese ago. Niggy Nigoin Indians is neither. Yeah, yan. No more than Niggy Chicky, no more than either Indian, Niggy no tea, Tuggy, Sunday good. More than either Indian, Niggy done. No more than either, more than the way Indian win. It to it do our big. Napu Gagi, can be the Migoyak, supervisor Gaggated. Hey, the way get the max and next city testament. Indiana school Magida. The gay, it is a mission. It was say, it takes soon. The gay taken. negate to go in, negate to go in. It was long ago. I am not an Indian. Long ago, when I was a child, we used to go to school over there in Prince Albert, was where we attended. Every year we started in September, we'd go off to attend school there at the residential schools, as they were called. That's where we went. It was Prince Albert Indian Residential School. That's what it was called. And while there the children used to be really desolate, really lonely, and they used to really cry for their parents, missing them a great deal. Well, we also used to have a great deal of fun every Saturday when Saturday came around. At that time, we used to watch movies. We used to call them picture shows. Those were the ones we really used to have fun when we finished watching them. We'd go and play outside just like we were. Well, we used to play pirates and also cowboys and Indians. That's how we used to play. And at that time, as we were growing up, we really used to, we had a very poor opinion of ourselves. We used to be told that we shouldn't live like Cree people. That's the way we were raised there at the school. But this one time we were going to watch this Cowboys and Indian movie, and it had John Wayne in it. I liked it. I really enjoyed watching those movies. I liked to watch John Wayne. Then when we had finished watching those ones, we used to go play Cowboys and Indians, and we'd gather ourselves together, choosing sides. One side were the Indians, and on the other side were the Cowboys. And I used to always be chosen last. Well, eventually on this one day I came to be chosen, and apparently I was supposed to be an Indian. Oh, I didn't like that. I really didn't want to be considered an Indian. I'm not an Indian, I said. I'm not going to be an Indian, I was saying. Hey, said this one man who looked after us, we called him supervisor. Hey, you're really, really pitiful thinking that way. You should think of yourself as an Indian because that's what you are, I was told. And that's all. Movies had a big effect on me. This was my reality a lot of times. It wasn't only my reality. I remember being at home for summertime and watching a cowboy and Indian movie, and the Indians were surrounding the settlers around the wagons, right? You know the classic scene where the Indians are circling the wagon, and the Indians are killing a lot of these settlers. All of a sudden, this old man next to me says, John Wayne got me with you, which means, how come John Wayne hasn't come to help out? I'm still expecting you white folks to do song and dance numbers for me, because that's we saw a lot of song musicals in residential schools. And they said, how come these white folks are not dancing all over the place like they show me in movies, huh? And I've used the English in the Cree part. I used residential school a lot in here, because at the time that I wrote this, way back when, a long time ago, we really didn't have a word for residential school. And but with history coming in, talking about residential school systems and stuff like that, a few elders have made up a word for residential school, which I use in the later stories. Church. School, church schools, that kind of stuff. So AJ Felix has, I think, coined the term for that. So I've been using that ever since. So if I had to rewrite the story, I'd use that in place of English. So language develops as time goes on. And that's beautiful about the Cree language. We do make up new words as we go along, when it's fitting. I still don't know how to say be you in Cree.
Be you.
Or be yourself. I don't know how to say that in English. In Cree. You'll figure something out eventually, right? I don't know. So we make up new words as we go along. So I'm not an Indian. Well, I'm glad I'm an Indian today. I went through a process where I was really proud, really pro-Indian. I even wore a headband back then. Really, once in a while, a feather up there. Really radical back in my younger days. I grew up a little bit after a while. We were always hungry at the residential school. And for a midnight lunch before going to bed, we were given this one biscuit. It was about a big. It's not like a pilot biscuit, you see. It's a little different, little different consistency. So I want to read about this, and it deals with movies again. And it harks back to those searchlights that I was talking about being in prisoner of war camp. Some of you know the story already. Page 164. I think we're starting to run out of time, right? Yeah, I think I better wrap it up. If somebody had asked me to do a traditional story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the English the way it is. I mean, the Cree the way it is, and read the English for this, just to save time. Okay, this one's called Dog Biscuits. I still say this is my favorite story. I think I made up a lot of it though, but as the book says, kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân, how I remember. How I remember. It's not necessarily the way anybody else will remember, okay? I'm just covering my ass here. Sorry about the language. Okay, Dog Biscuits. When I was a child, I went to school away from my reserve. It was at Prince Albert where I went to school. There was a residential school there where I went. There was a lot of ill treatment, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to tell a story about my fellow pitiful ones, my fellow students. We were kept separate from each other according to age. We were kept that way. Some boys who were bigger than the rest would be mean on the smaller boys, and they would fight amongst themselves to see who was the strongest. This was the way of it. The ones who were the strongest we called first boss. And the one who was the strongest was first boss. The next was the second boss, and another was the third boss. Me? Well, I was last boss because I was small and skinny even then. It didn't matter. No worries, I thought, because I had an older brother to look after me, to look out for me. There was this one boy who disliked me. He always tried to fight me, but he was afraid of my older brother, so I was safe. But one year, my older brother did not come to school. Uh-oh, I was afraid of that boy who always tried to fight with me. I would have to try to convince the first boss to look after me. I will call that boy who tried to fight me Frank Big Skunk, and Joseph Big Bull is what I would call the first boss. I would lend my comic books to first boss, and I also promised that I would do this work for him. Unfortunately, he rejected everything, even the desserts I would send him every time we ate. Hey, I began to be in a fuddled state of mind, because eventually Frank Big Skunk would catch me. What then should I do? Every night before we went to bed, we were fed one big biscuit. I really liked the taste of that biscuit. We call those biscuits dog biscuits. Okay, once I sent Joseph Big Gull that biscuit. He liked that. I began to sleep, then hungry, but happy because I was successful convincing Joseph Big Gull to look out for me when that Frank Big Skunk tried to fight me. There, from then on, every night I sent my dog biscuit to Joseph Big Gull. I was no longer scared of that Frank Big Skunk. I did that for quite a while. Every Saturday we watched a movie, and then when we finished watching, we would role play these movies, copying the movie that way. Pirates, cowboys and Indians, everything. We copied them all. Once we saw The Great Escape. Yes, That Great Escape. Uh-oh, that night, a little after we went to bed, I heard boys climbing out the window. All of a sudden, Joseph Big Gull came to get me. Okay, come with us, he said to me. Not even. My father will only send me back, I said to him. I see that he was holding something, a small bag, apparently. What is that? I said to him, pointing to his bag. It's my lunch, he says, dog biscuits. Then he was off, out the window. That's the last I ever saw of him. All the boys got brought back, but not Joseph Big Gull. That night, I did not sleep. I was afraid of Frank Big Skunk. How are we doing for time? I'm supposed to wrap up everything by 7:30. Was that what it said on the Your mic isn't done. Your mic isn't done, Arden.
Okay, I'll just keep talking to myself. Sorry. We haven't mentioned it, but Saul had some technical difficulties getting connected tonight, and as a result, he's using his phone and he can't see anybody's images, and he can't see the chat. He can't see any emojis. So I guess I don't know quite how to manage it, but maybe when he's finished the last story, maybe some people would like to unmute their mics and just say a word to let him know we're here. And
Some of you.
and well, and from the chat that you can't see, that I should have told you about earlier.
I can't see the comments at all.
You can't know that people are enjoying this, and it's really good to see that they're following along. But maybe after you tell the next story, I don't know whether there'll be time for questions after that, but maybe after you tell the next story, people could unmute their mics and say hello. Just say hey Tansy. But over to you
We're
again.
good until 8 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
We're good until 8 o'clock, so that's cool. Okay, I'll try to stop.
Ramila, have we got?
I'll try to stop.
Okay.
I'll try to stop at 1:45.
Okay,
So we're gonna have some time for questions.
that'd be great.
Those of you who have a copy of the book, maybe we could hear some of your opinions about the book. I'd love to hear those. Guess of the silent, guess of this thing. If you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all. It's been a dead silence all along, so I'm thinking it must be a really bad book. I have my insecurities, yes, but I also am a little rebel. Next story. Undercover reading. I did not understand English when I went to school, far away from school. 169. I'm just going to read the English part. Undercover reading. I did not understand English when I went to school, far away from home. However, it did not take me long to begin understanding because I would hear it every day, and every Saturday we'd watch movies. I also like to read. Every night I read stories and even the Bible under my blankets using a flashlight to read in secret. One night I was reading comic books under my blankets. I heard the supervisor who looked after us approaching my bed. I quickly dropped the comic book and picked up the Bible. When the supervisor pulled my blanket off, he found me reading the Bible. Okay then, very good. It's okay if you keep on reading. He left, and I picked up my comic book once again. That year, I read lots of comic books. The supervisor never bothered me again. It wasn't long before I started understanding English. I still love comic books, by the way.
Yeah, you can read them out in the open.
I can read them out in the open now, yeah. Really neat. Right. Okay. I'm trying to do this properly.
Well, I have to say, I think you've been doing really well for the difficulty of not being able to see or anything that's going on. You've done this once or twice before. You definitely have the hang.
I'm just doing the English parts nowadays to save on time, because I want to do 2 more and then do a traditional story.
Mm-hmm.
This is from page 189. Canada, oh Canada, 150 years. Canada, oh Canada, 150 years of suppression of First Nations peoples. By outlawing cultural practices, the potlatches, powwows, the sweat lodges, the past system needed to leave the reserves to seek work. Although we too went to fight in your wars, but first we had to give up our treaty rights. And when we returned, we were denied veteran benefits. And we could not return home after all we gave up our treaty status. Canada, oh Canada, 150 years of genocide. First you killed a buffalo, then kidnapped the children to go to church residential schools. Where you beat us for speaking our languages. That's why we're denied learning our cultural teachings and spiritual beliefs, which we were passed on through our traditional stories which taught us how to live on this earth. Residential schools where children were physically and sexually abused. Thousands died, many buried in unmarked graves. After leaving the schools, we were lost, so institutionalized that we did not know how to live. Many of us turned to crime, so we'd go to jail. Being inside is something we knew. Many were destroyed by alcohol and drugs and are forever fighting. Canada, oh Canada. 150 years of being strangers in our homeland. Sorry about that. It was a little difficult. You see, you could see the kind of stuff that I had to go through during the process of this book. That's why I'm grateful that Arden took over most of the final editing of the book, because I was really, really in a traumatic state toward the end of this book. Thank you. Not blaming you for the typos, by the way.
You know what? I will take responsibility for the errors, but
I want to claim the typos because they are really creative.
We aim to please.
Yeah. Okay, one last poem before I read a story, a traditional story that I really, really, really appreciate, really like. On the Threshold of a Dream, page 133. On the threshold of a dream, they forbade me the use of my language through which I know and name the world, my terms of order, my metaphysical system, my expressive cultural practices. They sought but failed to make my consciousness of my cultural self a tabula rasa, a blank state, on which to build a new cultural and social order, on which my Creeness was obliterated and erased, and the concepts of drunkard, lazy, evil, and every negative connotation of Indian that Western culture could create would be reinscribed on that blank slate. They failed.
Bravo.
Bravo.
Bravo to you for defeating them.
Thank you. All right, somebody wanted a traditional story. Just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm an elder, okay? This is a story of Wisaki and the chickadees, which is something you got to remember. Just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm wise. So watch what this story tells us. These are some of the lessons that stories tell us. Yeah. Okay. Wisaki and the chickadees. The teaching of this traditional story: don't disrespect sacred ceremony. They always a Wisaki but more do. That the way to go up now, but you see, I am a dream more to get that. The old name of that man now skis to go. Was skis, was skis to go. Ego mana, be away now. You could say, extreme money, you know, mana, go away. Okay, so they be back it in the game. Net the name mana, that deep way back, but the that you could say, is spell the how my Darwin. No, once Wisaki was walking along, all of a sudden he saw some chickadees having fun. They would take out their eyes, throwing them up in the air, they would fall back into their eye sockets. They would laugh loudly every time this happened. He thought they were doing a wondrous thing. We're going to mat those now. Oh, it do we say it says. Truly you are gifted, says we say Jack. Please teach me that thing. What's we say Jack? This is a sacred ceremony. We cannot teach you for no reason, they told him. At this point, we say Jack. No, it's because so as it. We see her. That was good. See, no, we see her. Can't me with them. But you beat a bimo, Dale. It meet the way, but you see, Basket, see what go. Dear, oh, my dad was good. See, no, you can't leave him there, somewhat angry. Then he goes and disguises himself. He dresses himself like an old man. And again, he goes to where the chickadees are playing. He even bends over just like an old man. He groans in pain. Hey, yo. You're honest to God. He did. But this scap megan hip, it's get the maginago. Oh, it's my head, he says. The chickadees notice him and take pity on him. Oh, she's going to my son. She got this going to down, oh, man. Get the night that we hit going. She's been not Namane, skis go, he guys make it so we been namane. He got garlic, the back it take it, skis go. No more hours to make it up tasting on and it took. Okay, wait, grandfather, they say to him. We will show you this, which will heal you. If you take your eyes and throw them in the air and let them fall back in your sockets, you will no longer have a headache, they tell him. Oh, I think it's going to have more notion, we say. Okay, please teach me, grandchild, says we say. Hey, you go sick, I think it's going to have my good. Yes, for me, I sweep and skis ago. You got away, man, beat the back, and so they teach him the way to do that. He threw his eyes up, and they fell right back into his head, like that. I was really happy. Hey, you go sit down to the man, speed, teach the one in it. Well, up to these is. Listen, this is what you have to do whenever you have a headache, says the bird. Don't disrespect that. No more than don't lose him, we say. No more than they got me to a okay, that's all right, grandchild, says we say. I won't disrespect that. We say, Jack. Cabbage, he walk did Davis Gorge seat no. Was though he would also gossip with did go we say, Jack. He snags so. And so he leaves from there, still stooped over as he walks, just like an old man. When he was far from there, from where he had left, he reverted back to being Wisaki Jack. That sounds so clever.
What happened?
No, I'm having problems with the camera. Okay, that's good. Okay, so here we go. Sorry about that. So he leaves, okay. Hey, Guayaski, Guayaki, Kiskisiyân. This is a speaker about that deep here. The we began Maui Mo, Tabscochi, it was truly a great gift, a great ceremony that the birds had taught him. When he saw some willows, he immediately began to groan like he had a headache. Oh, this to go on. This to go on. It do. Oh, it's my head. I have a headache, he says. You go and go to skis to go dumb speak sweep and we man got back in the stigonik. So he takes out his eyes and throws them up in the air, and they fall back into his eye sockets. Oh, the sacred ceremony is truly marvelous, he says. He leaves from there laughing. Once again, he sees other willows. Oh, honest to God, guy dead. You know, I mean, I put them, so make so even them. Go to go and back at them. You got that at the most deal. The go up, they get each check that for my kiski when guy gets gonna have master. Ouch, my head, he says. Once again, he takes out his eyes and throws them up in the air, and they fall back into his head. He walks along. He is very happy that he was taught the sacred ceremony. Once again, he sees some willows. Ouch, my head, he moaned. And once again, he takes his eyes and throws them in the air, and they fall back into his head. Whoa, this is a marvelous thing. It is truly a great thing, he says. Once again, he starts walking. Once again, he sees willows. Ouch, my head, he says. From there, he takes his eyes. He throws them up in the air. Wow, he throws them too far, and they fall elsewhere. Now he can't see. He looks for his eyes. He is crawling on the ground. Every now and then, someone pokes his eyes and pokes him in the eye. His eye socket. Ouch, he says. He continues looking for his eyes there on the ground. Once again, someone pokes him in his eye socket. Ouch, he goes. He looks for his eyes more. Where are they? Where are my eyes? He says. You know, once again, someone pokes him in the eye. Ouch, he says. He starts to get a headache from where his eye socket is being poked. All of a sudden, he hears someone laughing. Wow, he recognizes who his voice this is. The fox is once again teasing him. You just wait, fox, I'll teach you a lesson yet, he says. He crawls along there, and he finds a tree. Who are you? He says. I am a birch, says the birch. There's not you whom I want, says Wisaki. Suddenly he knocks his head on something. Boom. Who are you? I am a poplar, says the poplar. Oh, it's not you whom I want, says Wisaki. He begins to crawl away from there. Suddenly he knocks his head on something. Who are you? Says Wisaki. Oh, I'm a pine, says the pine. Ah, it is you whom I want, said Wisaki. I'll take some pine pitch from here. From the pine pitch, he takes some pine pitch. From the pine, he takes some pine pitch, and he chews it and then rolls it into a ball. He is making it round. Once again, once he finishes, he puts the round pine pitch into his eye socket. And apparently, he had made himself another set of eyes. Once again, he can see. Now, where is that fox, he says. He walks along looking for the fox. He sees him sleeping in the distance. How can I come back at him to teach him a lesson? Should I kill him? He says, okay, no. It would be better if I do something else to him. Let's see. I'll build up a fire where he sleeps so that fire goes around there. The fox will die from the heat, he says. And there he builds up a fire. He builds up a fire around where the fox is sleeping. The fire begins to burn around the fox. Suddenly the fox wakes up and he sees the fire all around where he had been sleeping. Well, it doesn't matter, he thinks. He immediately jumps up into the air and jumps over the fire. He can jump high, and he laughs. Only his tail got singed, and today you can still see that he is white at the tip of his tail. So a few lessons there. Not all old people. Notice how he tricks the birds. As soon as the birds saw an old man coming to them, they immediately offered their help, right? Without questioning who he is. So it's a lesson about not accepting every old man as an elder. Okay. That's one of the lessons. Another lesson is here that I wrote there is to respect ceremony. Don't disrespect ceremony. If it's taught to you, use it accordingly and wisely, and only when you need to. Okay, that is one of the reasons why I do not like having people praying before my presentations or even doing acknowledgements. It's not the place for them. And, you know, this was some of the teachings that I've come along with my journey back into my stories. I think we are going to be running out of time pretty soon. Anybody want me to read something else that they like?
Unmute yourself. If you've got any suggestions, just speak up so Saul can hear you. Because he's if you've got suggestions, speak up so Saul can hear you.
Âcathôhkîwina migrate south. That would be great.
Okay, 3:16. Yeah, remember to put on your microphone if you're going to be talking. All right. This is pretty short. Âcathôhkîwina migrates south. I see a typo. It's not ours. It's in English. Teaching in this one is accept yourself. Once Âcathôhkîwina was strolling along around a lake when he saw some geese flying up and landing again. He wondered what they were doing. Isa niska ja hoppahudet. Det got mana gawi I twihudet. Mama ska deo. Then so my taka make a sick. Same attack. I said Kawichi me we saw here niska. Little brothers, what are you doing? He asked the geese. Hey, takage goma. We were stepping on. You got get ta yao. Oh, chita pogo sawa no ta is tehoyak. Well, it's autumn now, but soon it will be winter and very cold. We must travel south so that we don't freeze to death, one of the geese replied. Martinista! You go with you now, oh. Me too, I'll come with you, said Âcathôhkîwina. But you don't have wings, replied the goose. Spinach. Surely this is tragic. Chiska, giga mama we chet nan, do niska. To me, wakumagana hega, do ta comaget, we sa hitchago, Maya week. Oh, ta comigo. Oh, niska. You got stiganek, you got good that spit on neck, you got good that scat deck, and you can say, it's a get shit that the more the hatch, usti suava, we sa hitchako. Yes, beneath basket at the it tap the door. Sounds like some of them sees it. Hey, okay, wait. Altogether, we'll help you, said the goose. So the goose called his relatives and told them, using their mouths, of course, to grab a hold of Âcathôhkîwina's body. So the geese did just that. One at his head, a few of his at his arms, others at his legs. In this way, the geese were able to carry the older brother Âcathôhkîwina, who was facing upward. He was on his back like that. Don't move, older brother, said the goose. If you move, we might accidentally drop you. Go the whisk away and Stacy. Is our niska. Our niska Stisa. He got to land. No more I go whisk one. Do is our Âcathôhkîwina. He could say it this we the magic. Oga niskak. A takom magic stitu our. Really, then Âcathôhkîwina the squeeze the sour kiwi. It do different. Okay, I won't move. Âcathôhkîwina replied as the geese began to fly away, holding onto him. The older brother, Âcathôhkîwina, was glad as he too was going south. He thought the way got bit the squealer. He might be muchigi tagusilet. He says the way bagasimoset. Dili them see mag was go he whiskey brother hut. He go way up a mat and his squealer. My go was go weed. Get just good. and the ska. Suddenly Wisahijak heard some women, and it sounded like they were having fun. Perhaps they are swimming, he thought. Quickly he moved, twisting to try to see those women. As soon as he moved, the geese dropped him. Wisahijak Wisahijak fell right into the water where the women were swimming. Truly they laughed at him. They got in the march, so and it took the whole Wisahijak. That took the garden. You got to have skirts, yeah, but Michiminajak Wisahijak. Easy Milajak. So Wisahijak never made it south, but still, when migrating, geese fly in the same formation, as if still holding Wisahijak. That might be, right? There's a really important lesson there, not to get distracted by something. Right, Darian, you know the lesson? When you have a goal, keep your eyes on the goal, right? Wisahijak didn't. He got distracted by. I hope you enjoyed it. I think that'll be good for now. And I hope you enjoy the book. And I hope you tell stories to your children in Cree and in English. And if anybody has questions about some of the stuff that's in the book, please go ahead and ask if you want. I can answer. Remember to put your mic on if you're going to ask a question.
Ninote tano sigit gitam tapo kinanas kumtin. Ega pachi tano mama stai no apa agi. Le ta chmos to agi to aga no ago magna in skunnik. Tapo ni chega no mama stai gan. All the stories, they reminds me of all the times we were in class and you would read them. So hearing them each time, I think I'm picking up a little bit more and more of the win. But that way I very much again as you're telling your stories, it's always good to hear it. That way much again, it's always good fun. So that way you can ask something.
That way. We check it in Dr. Win. I'm gonna make you cry, okay?
Anyone else have a comment or a thought they'd like to share? As I just typed in the chat that Saul isn't actually able to see those comments at this point. The comments that you see eventually are lovely. But
right? I think there is a way to save those things on Zoom.
Yeah, they'll save them, but I just want to encourage people to speak up if they'd like and give Saul a little bit of feedback, because he's been operating in a bit of a black hole this evening, and yet you'd never know it from his presentation. I'm going to read you for Debbie Folleron. It says, a profound thank you to all of you and to you, Solomon, for writing and reading from your beautiful book. Hearing Cree made such an impact on me. It's very beautiful, even if I don't understand the language. What an amazing storyteller. Thank you for all you're doing, for your teaching, your translating, your wisdom, your generosity, your humor. I've learned so much this evening. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, Colleen has a comment also.
Go ahead, Colleen.
I thought you couldn't see the comments.
No, I can't see the comments.
I can.
No, I can see them, but I can't read them because they just pop in and then pop out again. It's not long enough for me to read them.
Oh, okay. Well, hello, Solomon.
Hey.
I just want to say thank you. That's so true. I laughed and I cried when I read your book, and it was just so beautiful. All your stories, all your personal stories, and the traditional stories that you told were just written in such a just a beautiful and eloquent manner, and I love them.
Thank you.
And I'll probably read them again because I'm sure some of them went over my head. But it's good that I have the book because I will return to it often. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make you guys cry, okay? One last thing.
I'd like to chime in after you're done, Mr. Ratt.
Before more comments, okay? I'm going to take time before more comments here. Letter to Mama. Memory from residential school. Dear Mom, how are you? I am fine. School is fun, but I am homesick a lot. Please send Bannock. That was my first letter home once I knew how to print in English. Each letter I sent ended up with, please send Bannock. Still like Bannock to this day. Mom is Bannock. And my older sister, every time my older sister knows I'm coming into town, she makes Bannock for me right away.
That's a good sister.
So thank you so much for your comments. So thank you for your attention. And I hope to read those comments that are on the side. Please save them.
Massy Arts says, please send Bannock.
Please send Bannock. One of you, the past few years I've been teaching from home, right? When people have been dropping goods off at me at the balcony, on my balcony, the famous balcony drop. So drop some Bannock off on my balcony, okay? Wait, but tell me there before the crows get at it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Marlene Tahoe.
Uh-huh.
I'm Woodland Cree from Montreal Lake. I too was at the same residential school as you, and possibly for a shorter time. I cannot seem to remember a large amount of my life after I too was torn away from my safe home at my father's trapline. Trapline was indeed an educational experience because I seem to remember most of the hunting and trapping expeditions. I was fortunate to partake in, young as I was. I was my father's baby at the age of 6. One day he came home to White Swan Lake from the Montreal Lake community without the grocery he had gone to trade with his furs. He was refused services, and the church informed him that he had to send my older sister and I to the residence. He was heartbroken. I may have had dissociative amnesia because my mind is blank when I try to remember my time at the residence. What I specifically remember while at the residence was how a group of us used to play, hidden from sight behind a cement garbage stand. There we used to tell stories to each other. One of the stories we enjoyed was about Johnny and his uncle's liver, which he had supposedly cut out of a corpse in place of the real liver his mother had asked him to go and buy. But he had bought himself candy instead. So every night when he was going to go to bed, the deceased uncle's ghost would come and say, Johnny, where's my liver? I am on the first step. Johnny, where's my liver? I am on the second step. And so on until we were all screaming in fright. I remember Benjamin and Arthur Roberts and you, and I don't know, there's quite a few of us are there all always together. So thank you for this time tonight. I really enjoyed your readings and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because it is, like for a lot of us who went there, a lot of us sort of blanked out a lot of stuff, and it takes a little while to get back to it. And part of the fun for me is to be able to look at some of the funny incidents that I experienced there, and there were a few of them, and I like that. I like to bring those out. And there was a lot of loneliness, but there's a long road to healing, right? And we have
Thank you so much for sharing, Solomon. It's I can't wait to send you the comments in this chat, because it's just been such a party there, and there's just been so much warmth and feedback. I think we have 5 more minutes left, and I know Micah has their hand up, so I'll let them speak, and then perhaps we can wrap up from there. Micah, go ahead.
Tansay Solomon, Misha Nitsikasan, Egwa kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân, Poco Richardson Newkin McWatch, Inanasko Mitanao. Thank you so much for your stories and for you sharing tonight. I was listening as I was cooking with my little sister, and for the past couple of years, I've been encouraging her and myself to learn the language and to continue on, especially with having to be brought up with being non-Indigenous and then Indigenous teachings, to hear the language being spoken and also to have the textbooks that you've written and the books and all that. I can't thank you enough and express my gratitude, and I'm thankful for you getting to share that with us.
Thank
It
you.
was a great event, and I hope to see you in the future, and I will be dropping you off some bannock on your famous balcony, so expect that.
Yay!
But I'm mitten now. Take care.
Thank you so much. I had a Zoom meeting one time, and with my IT person for classes and stuff, and I said, "Excuse me, somebody's coming to my balcony to drop off some coffee for me, some iced coffee." I said, "What? Somebody's dropping some iced coffee for me? How do you know that?" "Well, I posted on Facebook for somebody to drop off some iced coffee for me, and somebody came." He just looked at me, shook her head, but I enjoyed that iced coffee very much.
It sounds like Uber Eats is a lot more personalized where you're from, Saul. And I think somebody in the comment was even offered to learn how to make bannock before they dropped it off to
Right
you.
on.
So you're creating a generation of cooks here too. What a wonderful evening. It's been
Thank
such
you.
a joy to host this and to provide the digital platform gathering place for us to meet. I wonder if you have any last reading for us, a last and a way to wrap up the evening. We'd so welcome it.
Let me figure something out here. Let's see, where am I? Okay, so last thing to read is "We Are Connected."
Mm.
Where is it? I can see that. I should have had that. 216, let's put that. Okay, let's look at Basil H. Johnson, 218. One of the people I really absolutely enjoy reading when I was going to school. About knowledge, Basil H. Johnson. As rich and full of meaning as many as may be individual words and expressions, they embody only a small portion of the entire stock and potential of tribal knowledge, wisdom, and intellectual attainments. The greater part is deposited in myth, legends, stories, and in the lyrics of chants that make up the tribe's literature. Therein will be found the essence and substance of tribal ideas, concepts, insights, attitudes, values, beliefs, theories, notions, sentiments, and accounts of their institutions and rituals and ceremonies. An Anishinaabe writer who I admire very much. Thank you all for listening to me. And
Thank you
I
so
look forward to
much.
the comments.
Yes, and thank you for ending us in a good way. And Arden, thank you so much for such a beautiful opening and for guiding us with such great flow throughout the entire event. I hope everyone takes care of themselves this evening. We've gone through so many emotions, joyous and difficult chapters to read as well. Hoping that folks will stay warm. It's snowing randomly here in Vancouver. We don't usually get that kind of weather, but we'll take it as a sign to also keep warm this evening. And so please, if you haven't already, make yourself some tea, grab a blanket, get cozy, and know that we're all in collective care together. Just really grateful again, Solomon. Thank you so much for your time. And take care.